expectations. Not standards, but expectations.
Half of my life is over.
I'm not okay being single. I don't want to be single, and I get depressed.
I'm 53. I'm tired. I'm tired of doing it myself.
I get my feelings hurt.
3 failed relationships since my marriage had ended.
I am exhausted.
I am done.
Women over age 40 keep asking where all of the good men are. Hell, even asking where any men at all can be found. To them, the apps feel like a graveyard of half-available dads, emotionally sealed-off bachelors, and grown men who women claim are nearly allergic to commitment. In this video, I'm going to give these women the data-driven truth that the very middle-aged women complaining about the dating market are the very ones who created the situation that they're in. I'll discuss why the numbers themselves are stacked against middle-aged women, the number of men who were left to rebuild after losing everything, why men don't trust women, and why men over the age of 40 would rather protect their peace than to ever try again. So stick around, because I'm diving into what happens to middle-aged women in the dating market when men rebuild on their own terms. Us middle-aged men with no kids at home, no desire to step into someone else's family, and no interest in providing or proving our worth to a world that didn't value us the first time. So I've gathered a lot of data on men's divorce and relationships, including divorce outcomes, post-breakup adaptation, and by the end of this video, you'll understand the real reasons that dating for women in their 40s and above is so difficult and challenging for them, and why the men that they want are not lining up to lose the same game twice. If you're new here, my name is Todd. I'm a psychologist, an author, and a men's advocate. I make data, theory, and psychology-driven videos like this one to give guys the evidence that they need to stand firm in their values and to equip them to respond when women and society try to convince them that they're nothing but cheap, low-effort, misogynistic pricks. I hope this content earns your subscription, so let's see how close we can get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. So we can get this type of content to as many men as we can who really need it. Okay, so let's start with the data, and then I'll contextualize it for women who are dating or trying to date at age 40 and above. Let's review what it means for them when they're trying to suddenly find their person and they're bitching online when they can't find it. Keep in mind here, as we go along, I'm only talking about married men or those that were subsequently divorced. And many men in long-term relationships with or without children never marry at all. They're not divorced because they were never married in the first place. So just remember that the actual number of men that I'll be describing is actually much, much higher. But the most reliable data that are available is relative to married men and divorced men. A lot of this, for example, comes from census data. So today I'm speaking only about men who were at one time married. And also keep in mind that we can get to decent ballpark US numbers, but they're stitched from several different sources that I'll link to in the video description. So I really do encourage you, find a couple of those links, see some of the information, the charts and graphs, and the results that are in the studies and the different articles and in that data. I've done my best to capture everything the best I can for divorced men ages 40 plus in the United States. But as you'll see, the data sources, they're not always provided exactly the way that we need for these types of in-depth breakdowns. So we need to contextualize multiple sources to get the complete picture. So let's start with this. How many men age 40 plus are divorced? Actually, let me move this up here. I'm going to look through some of my outline as we go through some of this. So how many men in the United States age 40 plus are divorced? With a total U.S. population of about 332 million, about 49.5% are men. And roughly half of that population is age 40 plus. So there are about 80 to 81 million men in the United States that are age 40 plus. And census data show us that among ever married adults, those that have ever been married, age 20 and above, about 1/3, 33%, have been divorced. And among ages 55 to 64 or higher, it's about 43% of them have been divorced. And I'll put some overlays up here so you can pause and read as we continue. So if we blend these groups, a reasonable estimate is that 30 to 40% of men aged 40 and above have been divorced at least once. That's 30 to 40% of men aged 40 and over. And this gives us a ballpark figure of about 25 to 30 million men in the United States over the age of 40. Remember, that's 30 to 40% of them in that age range who have been divorced. Of which, about 80% of those men who are divorced, that's 20 to 24 million of them, were left by their wives. So let's talk next, number 2, about how long were these men married before their divorce occurred. For marriages that did end in divorce in the United States, the average, that's the mean average length of a first marriage that ends in divorce is about 8 years. And the median is also right in there, about 7 to 8 years. So the median, as you know, half more than that, half less than that. It's the middle number. It's not the average. So both the average and the median is right at about 8 years of marriage for these men. And marriages that begin later in life that end in divorce are often a bit shorter, right? Somebody gets married in their 40s or 50s or 60s. A lot of times those marriages are shorter, maybe their second marriages. While gray divorces, those divorces that happen in later middle age, after age 50, can represent marriages of about 20 to 30 years. But when we look across the averages of everybody, marriage length still clusters are right around that 8-year mark. So for typical divorced men in the age 40 plus bucket, we can say confidently that on average and the median, their marriages were about 8 years. So let's look at what percentage of these divorced men have kids. And this, some of this comes from the U.S. Census data and their work on male fertility. And it shows that about 60% of all U.S. men age 15 plus are fathers, regardless of current or former marriage status. So 60% of all guys age 15 plus are fathers. And among men aged 40 to 50, about 76, that's 3 out of 4 of them, have at least one biological child. So for context, divorced men who are age 40 and over are more likely to have ever married than the general population. And divorce is disproportionately a phenomenon, obviously, right, among parents. So putting all of this together, a reasonable estimate is that roughly 80 to 90% of divorced men age 40 and above have at least one child. That's 8 or 9 out of 10. So as such, we can comfortably say that if we meet a divorced guy over the age of 40, the odds are very high, again, 8 or 9 out of 10, that he has kids. So how many kids does each one of these men have on average? In a detailed study I found about divorced parents looking at custody patterns, we find that an average of 1.61 children per divorced parent in the sample. Again, I'll put these sources in links in the video description. So this lines up with broader fertility patterns that show total fertility is currently around 1.6 births per woman in the United States. And older cohorts, that's today's guys that are ages 40 or 50, maybe a little bit above that, typically had closer to 2 children on average. So for divorced men age 40 and above, their average number of kids is around 1.5 to 2. The median number of kids is 1 or 2 children, right? I think that makes sense that most have 1 or 2 kids and fewer have 3 or more. So here's just a super compressed version of everything I just went through. For men in the United States aged 40 and over, those that have ever been married is about 25 to 30 million, which is about 30 or 40% of all men aged 40 and above. The number of years before their divorce was about 8 years. The number of kids that they have, or the number of those that have kids, is about 80 to 90%. Again, that's men age 40 and above who are divorced. 80 to 90% of them have children. And the number of kids that they have is right around, let's say, close to 2, just under 2. So now let's put all of this into perspective for women aged 40 and above who keep asking the stupid question of where all of the available men are. Ladies, dating after 40 drops you into a completely different landscape than the one that you left years ago. By this stage in life, an enormous number of men have already been through marriage and had it collapse in their hands. Roughly 25 to 30 million men in the United States over age 40 have experienced divorce, and the vast majority of those men did not leave their wives. They were left, and that experience left them drained. Drained financially from support obligations and divided assets, emotionally drained from conflict and betrayal, socially drained from losing entire circles of friends and family, and mentally drained from years of trying to fix something that was already gone. When women meet these men, the men that they themselves created in the dating world, the men in their dating pool are not starting from innocence and a place of hopeful optimism. They're restarting and regrouping from the trauma that you put them through. And that matters because men do not forget the costs. They're not going to hand the keys to their life to someone who can legally destroy them again. So congratulations, ladies, you played yourself. So what looks like to middle-aged women like men's commitment issues is often a rational survival strategy. Men ages 40 and over are simply unwilling to risk everything a second time. The trust that we once had and we gave freely now has a price, and very few of us are willing to pay it again. Reaching midlife has also forced many men to reset. Divorced men in their 40s and 50s are rebuilding on their own terms. They're done chasing approval or providing their worth in a world that has already made it clear that we are disposable. So men now prioritize what actually protects them. Things like retirement planning, stability, leaving a legacy, and the autonomy that comes with hobbies and personal interests. These men have lived through enough to understand that society nearly never respects their sacrifice. So we've stopped trying to earn respect that never comes. And where children are involved, our priorities shift even more. A father who already has kids does not need a partner to feel purpose. And he doesn't want outside chaos of single or divorced mothers introduced into that bond. He's not looking to step into a role of an instant step-parent to a teenager who doesn't want him there. Nor does he want to negotiate discipline, house rules, emotional boundaries, or anything else in someone else's household. Meanwhile, his own kids often don't live with him, which gives him more freedom, more time, and fewer pressures than women his age who are still raising children at home. And here's the part that we need to keep reminding women and society. We have adapted to solitude. The solitude that was forced upon us by these very women themselves. We've rebuilt ourselves in the aftermath, and we've discovered that being alone isn't lonely, it's peaceful. There's no fighting, there's no walking on eggshells, there's no court dates, no threats, no proving ourselves in vain. We have our hobbies, we have our new homes, our routines, and our sanity. We don't need women to rescue us from quiet. We like the quiet. So for women dating at ages 40 and above, I think is an unrealistic collision with a demographic of men who have already had the family. They've already survived betrayal and rebuilt themselves. And they've already learned the lessons. And listen, ladies, we're not bitter. We're just finished. We're not walking away mad. We're just walking away. We've been there. We've done that. And there is no compelling reason to roll the dice again with our hearts, our homes, or our financial futures.